I'm joined by Clara Sue and Cynthia Yee. Clara is the Executive Director of the Clarion Performing Arts Centre with a passion to support music, theatre, poetry and art. She is also a playwright, a teacher, an actor herself and a poet. Thank you for your time today, Clara. Cynthia Yee is the founder of the Grant Avenue Follies, a senior dance troupe that has raised millions of dollars for senior homes in San Francisco. She has also been heavily involved in the performing arts throughout her life and even won the prestigious Miss Chinatown crown. Both Cynthia and Clara are recipients of the Jefferson Award as well for their dedication and commitment to their communities. Thank you both so much for taking the time today to speak with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So to start, how did you two meet? And I'll go to Clara for this one.
I have a music shop in San Francisco, Chinatown since 1983. And everybody that, all my friends I met through the shop. And so there's no exception with Cynthia. She walked into the music shop and we connected right away. And that was because on my birthday, I received a book about the about the San Francisco nightclubs called the Forbidden City nightclub. And in it, I read about this group of women called the Grant Avenue Follies. And apparently they were still active in Chinatown. And so I said, oh, I'd like to meet this group of women, but nobody seemed to be able to tell me where and who they were. And then Cynthia walked in with her friends and I asked them, I said, do you know about the Grand Avenue Follies? They said, we are the Follies. So we just kind of clicked. I was so happy to know them. They started using my space because the music shop had turned into a performing arts center. And then they needed an actor. So they asked me to do it. So then we developed a very, fun and meaningful and great relationship since then.
Oh, wonderful. That's such a lovely story. So Clara, could you actually tell me a little bit about your life and your work?
Well, I was born in Hong Kong. And I came to the United States when I was 16 years old. I had 2 years of high school and then I went to a music college. I graduated with a music degree. And then my dad was a piano manufacturer in Hong Kong. He was probably the only piano manufacturer in Hong Kong. So I grew up in a piano factory. And then he immigrated to the United States, to San Francisco. And I moved to San Francisco and we decided to open a music shop together. So that's what we did. And we built studios so that we can have lessons for children. And then he would continue to sell pianos and violins, but then it was really difficult to compete in the market for piano. And so gradually we kind of switched and became a world music instrument shop, which was very unique in the city. There were not too many music shops that sell instruments from all over the world. And we became known for that. And then when I was 44 years old, I discovered poetry. And so I said, well, I came into poetry so late, I really would like to learn more about it and devote more of my time. And running a business is crazy. Every day there's a crisis. And I'm not exaggerating. If I don't have 3 crises, I have 1, So I said, I can't do this. I can't do both at the same time. So I said, okay, so I'm going to sell my business. So I sold my business to my associates and just became a poet full time. And then in 2015, my father passed away, my stepmother passed away. And so I decided to buy the business back without doing any of the retail or instruments. I wanted poetry to have a presence in Chinatown. So that was my idea of getting that space back where I can do productions for poetry. And so I think it was 2016, I bought the space back. And then I met Cynthia, I think 2017. And then, then it's an explosion of activities and adventures. So it's been a great journey.
What was it like moving from Hong Kong to America?
Well, I first moved to New Jersey. That's where I had my high school, college, and then I got married, and then I moved to San Francisco. New Jersey was so different. When I was there, I was very, very busy trying to assimilate myself into the American culture. Coming back to San Francisco is a totally different experience because San Francisco, there's so many Chinese and you have a Chinatown, and it's very strange because I guess because I grew up in Hong Kong, so I never really make that comparison between San Francisco, Chinatown, and Hong Kong. But my children, when I took them to Hong Kong, they said, "Oh, it's just another Chinatown, but it's bigger." So I said, "Okay, maybe they're right." So I feel at home, very much at home in San Francisco, Chinatown.
Oh, absolutely wonderful.
I was actually in Princeton.
Yeah, what was it like going to Princeton University?
It's I don't know. I'm a sort of a adventurous person. I like to travel, and I think at that time I was very young. I just wanted to focus in music, and I practiced like 6 to 8 hours a day. I didn't not much of a social life at that time, so I wasn't really thinking. I wasn't really looking for anything other than what I was doing at that time. It was a very focused 4 years when I was in Princeton.
So, Cynthia, you were born in San Francisco, I believe. So, what was your childhood like?
Well, I was born in San Francisco, Chinatown, and my life revolved around Chinatown. And I didn't even get out of Chinatown until I was about 17 years old when I joined the show, became a professional dancer, and traveled the world with the review that I was in. And so that was my first experience of leaving San Francisco. Even going out to the San Francisco Zoo and Playland by the beach was a very big adventure for me. We would go on a field trip on the bus or trolley, and it was like, wow, where am I? So I didn't get to step out of Chinatown until I was 17 years old. And it's pretty amazing because so-called coming back to Chinatown and meeting Clara, what happened was that I had open mic in a cellar of a restaurant in Chinatown, and that restaurant was being sold. So we had to find a space. So we went around looking, and I peeked into these double doors of the Clarion Music Center. And that's when I met Clara, when she showed me the book and said, "Do you know these people?" And that's how it all started. It's been a wonderful few years. And I always wanted a space for the Grant Avenue Follies. We started in 2004 and always just basically did our practice and everything at the senior center. So we never had a home. And so now we have a home, and we just love to go to the Clarion. We eat there. We even cook pot stickers there and have food parties. And so that's our little clubhouse. And it's been wonderful.
Yeah, so before Clara was mentioning the golden age of nightclubs in San Francisco, could you tell me a little bit about what your experience was like during that time?
I joined the show. It was called the Toy and Wing variety show, and became a dancer and traveled the world since 1963. I was 17 years old. I actually replaced one of the dancers one night because she was sick. And so Dorothy Toy, who was head of the show, called up my mother. They were, family friends, and asked if I was still dancing. And of course, my mom said yes. And I joined the show that night. So what happened was that they needed a dancer desperately, so-called. And so I learned 3 numbers within the day and opened that evening. And I was supposed to dance for maybe 2 months during the summer vacation before going to college. And the gal never came back after, taking a sick leave. And so I just started my dancing career for the next 10 years, traveling out of a suitcase. We went to Canada. We were in the Caribbean. We traveled to Europe. We were in the Orient, and 10 years of basically living out of a suitcase.
And what was it like winning Miss Chinatown?
We had a break in our show for about 1 month. And so being in the Miss Chinatown USA pageant was one of my childhood dreams. So I flew back to San Francisco. We were in Montreal at the time, flew back to San Francisco, entered the pageant, and became Miss San Francisco Chinatown. It was a very good experience. I was exposed to many, many nice people whom are friends even today. So I encourage others to always participate in the pageant, because you learn so much about the history and culture of Chinatown and other Chinatowns, because contestants come from all over the world. And so it's just a wonderful experience, especially when you're only about 21 years old of age. So
Yeah, so I'd love to also touch a little bit now on the work that you both do. So I'll go back to you, Clara, and ask, how has the Clarion Music Centre changed over the decades, really?
Well, we started in the basement of the building, of the location that we're still in, teaching traditional violins, pianos, voice, some Chinese musical instruments, selling piano, violins, and Chinese musical instruments. So we did that for about 10 years. And then, as I told you, that selling pianos was very difficult because there was very stiff competition, especially with the pianos coming in from China. And so then the next 10 years of Clarion became a world music instrument shop. And we were known internationally because a lot of musicians, performers, when they came to visit San Francisco and they needed instruments or they were looking for something, they would come to Clarion to see what we have. And we also had a music series that we feature world music performers every week, every Friday. We ran it for about 7-8 years. So that was the second part of Clarion. And then the third part is now, when we have made it into a performing arts center and, you know, doing poetry, theater work, and we even have burlesque shows, readings, workshops, all kinds of things.
And how important has it become for the community in Chinatown?
Well, we had about 130 students taking lessons from us before, but because of the pandemic, that no longer happened. But actually, the year before the pandemic in 2019, I started a children's theater in the summer. So I wrote a play called Love on the Magpie Bridge, and it is about the Night of Sevens, which is a women festival, a traditional women festival in China. But people don't know about it too much. And even, I don't know if Cynthia had heard about the...
I did through my mom's temple,
Okay.
actually.
Okay, so, but some people, maybe the younger generation have not heard about it. But it's a beautiful festival that celebrates nature and domestic skills and women. So I wrote a play based on the legend, and the children performed. And then last year, because of COVID, we couldn't have the children together. So I did rehearsals with them on Zoom for my second play, which is about having an adventure inside a piano. So we did Zoom rehearsal, and then I went to Clarion and I filmed each kid by themselves. Then my son-in-law put all the footage together and we made it into a movie. So this year, I'm on my third play now. It's called Neil Armstrong at the Moon Palace. We were all together, the kids were together, we had rehearsals, we had the mask on. And I was hoping that by the end of August, when we perform, they can take their mask off. But now the cases are rising, so that's not possible. And so what we are thinking of doing is to film them with their mask on and produce a movie like that. So we started with having about 7 kids for the first play, and now we have 13 kids. And these are all children from our community. And I like doing the theater because I feel that they learn a lot more in a very short period of time and in different discipline of the arts. So I'm hoping that I can continue with the theater project throughout the year, not just in the summer.
What was your experience like in San Francisco during the pandemic? So maybe I'll go to Cynthia first this time.
I think your question is about, you know, what we had to go through. We had to close down immediately, March 16th of 2020.
Yeah.
And so immediately the community became a ghost town. So everyone had to get together and make sure that all the small businesses would survive. So luckily, we had a very strong community to offer even food programs to the people living in the single room occupancy apartments so that they wouldn't have to cook together and they would have less interaction with each other. So food was available, and in order to keep the small businesses alive, 40 restaurants were considered to make sure that they would be they would have business every day. So maybe 50, at least 50 people would be able to go to these particular restaurants to keep them alive. And so these food vouchers were given to the residents of Chinatown. And so every day you would go to a different restaurant, and each restaurant would have a minimal amount of business. And at the same time, the residents would have a place to go to eat and to bring food back to their homes. And I think that was a very, very important program to keep everything alive so that our local businesses would be able to survive. We knew that the tourist industry would go down to zero. And so having this community togetherness was really important. And I think that helped us through the pandemic. The Chinese hospital was able to offer free COVID testing, and they would have testing stations throughout the streets of Chinatown, and you would be able to get COVID tested. I think that was a very, very important program from the hospital. And that, and also they had the groceries at the different sites where you could line up and get boxes of food to bring home. And so I think that was important to keep the community alive. That I commend the community for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the Chinatown community has done a tremendous job during the COVID time to help the community. And personally, we Zoom every day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we
Yes.
started Zooming every day since April. And just recently we stopped doing that, but we kept our community, the Follies. We've never seen each other so much as, when during the pandemic, we see each other every day for at least an hour, just to check on each other and give each other support. I think that was tremendous to have this community for ourselves. And for me creatively, I think I did a lot of things that I wouldn't have done, if there's no pandemic, because I'm home. I started writing. I wrote musical compositions for my play. I've never written music before. And we did little skits, the Follies and we would practice on Zoom, and we would put a skit together. And I don't know, we did a lot of things. When it is time, as I say, the pandemic, okay, maybe it's a little, what do you call, a little barrier, a little thing that stops us from moving, but we find a way to go around it, and then we do other things, and it turned out to be fun.
Now, Cynthia, you have kept the Grant Avenue Follies group going during the pandemic as well. Could you tell me what inspired the creation of the group?
We started in 2004, like I said, and it was because the doctor told one of the ladies, one of the founders, that she should get out and exercise more. And so we started taking classes at the senior center. 4 of us that were nightclub dancers. And soon after, while I was serving as president of the Chinese Hospital Auxiliary, I was asked to put together an event, a fundraising event for a group about maybe 300 people in one of the Chinese restaurants here in Chinatown. Well, when we came out with our fishnet stockings, feather headdresses, long gloves, fringe dresses, the room just went quiet. And everyone started looking over to where we were standing, ready to go on stage. this never happened before, because if you are acquainted with Chinese banquets, they are quite noisy and people never stop talking. And no matter what type of entertainment, you could be the best opera singer or whatnot, but people do not stop talking or eating. Well, they stopped talking and eating for us when they saw these high feather headdresses. And then to have on fishnet stockings, that completely stopped the noise and everything. So we did our number, and to our surprise, we actually had a standing ovation. Now, standing ovations never happen in Chinatown banquets, but we had this wonderful ovation. And all of a sudden, they call us back, get on stage. Everyone wanted to take photos with us. And so that's how the Grant Avenue Follies started, because other fundraisers wanted us. And we just loved what we were doing to see people so happy and to pay attention to us. And then from then we went on to a lot of nursing homes, which is basically what we wanted to do in the beginning, because of the fact that we wanted to bring joy to people that no longer could go out anymore. And so you could see people tapping their feet, with walkers. And when we go to the hospital, Veterans Hospital, they actually roll the beds out for the patients to see us. And, you could see them raising their hand, finally clapping away. And it's wonderful. And so we decided we want to do more of this. And before you know it, 17 years later, we are at it again. And we are still doing it. And this time with the Gai Mo So, which is the feather duster that was created and you saw as the music video, as the rap. So.
Yeah, that leads beautifully into my next question, which is, what inspired Gai Mo So?
Cynthia. Well, we got really angry seeing that all these seniors, especially grandma and grandpas, got pushed and injured and killed violently. It happened over and over again. And Cynthia was saying, he said, this has to stop. But, what can we do? And she said, when we were small, our parents had this Gai Mo So, and they would discipline us when, we're becoming unruly and stuff like that. There's power in this Gai Mo So, So she kept saying that to me and even took me out to dinner. She said, what can we do with this Gai Mo So?
Is that what you remember as well, Cynthia?
Yes. I remember going to the Chinese opera with my mom. She was a real fan of the Chinese opera. So we would go every night, basically. In those days, if you go in after 8 o'clock or so, you only pay 10 or 15 cents, because half of the show is over. And so you just go in for the last part of it. Anyway, children would be running up and down the aisles in the Chinese opera playing. And I remember distinctively this particular actor have a wooden block. And then he's basically rapping. I guess the Chinese knew about rapping because before rapping was popular. And so I mentioned it to Clara, and she knew what I was talking about. And so that's basically how the Gai Mo So was created, because we wanted to not just go to a rally and hold up posters of the message, but we wanted to do something. After all, we are entertainers, so we should go there to entertain, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so what were some of the challenges involved? First, I'll ask you, Clara, with actually writing the song.
It was not difficult. After that great dinner that Cynthia bought me, nothing is impossible. The Chinese or the Cantonese, what the elders been saying to us when we were growing up, there was not a new there was nothing that I've written that was not part of the language of the elders, you know, threatening us with the gaimoso. I just put it together, that's all. And then, you know, I went to an audio engineer, and he said, you need a little bit more English. Okay, this is not really a rap yet. You need something a little bit more of a narrative, and it would be good to be in English, then people know what you're talking about. So I started writing. I've never written a rap before in my life, and I really don't know anything about it. But he helped, you know, he made suggestions, and then so I said, okay, so I'm going to write more of a narrative style, and then use the Chinese as a chorus, and then put it together like that. But the idea is not really to, how would I say, not to, the idea is to bring awareness of respect, which I feel is lacking in our society. And this awareness of respecting not only your friends, but also the elders. So I want to bring that message across, instead of, you know, in a sort of a confrontational but humorous way. And I think humor can go a long way in making other people listen than if you're just gonna, you know, confront them head on. So, you know, that's how I got started with this.
I'd like to move to the element of empowerment and coming together in the rap. Was part of the message to empower women specifically? And if not, who was the rap empowering?
It does empower older, senior women, that we are not being forgotten. We are still a very vibrant part of the community, and that we have something to offer.
You know, our group is minimum age 65 all the way to 86 years old. And I think that our message is that we're alive. We know a lot. We've been through a lot. And that the younger generation has to respect that, and to know that, you know, whatever the generation before and our generation, we do it is for the next generation. And, you know, don't think you're so smart, you know, that there is respect. Respect is very important part of life. And they will have to remember and learn that they wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the generation before.
Mm.
Could you tell me a little bit about the process of creating the video and even performing the song? I mean, was it almost a therapeutic process coming together like that, and being able to produce something during such a difficult time?
We had great fun. It was so much fun. It came together in a very short period of time. I think it was the end of April when we started having that idea. And then I usually, you know, just to kind of homemade put a recording together. And then I said, well, we have 11 people. I can't do this. You know, there's too much editing, and let's just find somebody to do it for us. So we found Greg Landau, who's a fantastic audio engineer. He gave me suggestions, but also we knew that the Asian American Pacific Islander Month is coming up in May, and we have to get this done before the end of May. You know, we have to, so that we will get more attention. So we scheduled to record in the beginning of May, and then the video, we also did it in a very, very short time. And so I think the premiere of the video was May 21st. So we got in, and sure enough, we got a lot of attention because all the media was focusing on Asian American Pacific Islander at that time.
Cynthia, what was the experience like for you?
I think the whole thing took me by surprise. I didn't expect it to explode the way it did, and to even have the opportunity to perform in front of Reverend Jesse Jackson at the rally was, you know, very, very nice. And
Yes,
so it's great. It was great. And so, and now we're, you know, looking to be on the Steve Harvey show. I think our message has gone out, and we're very pleased with the result of Clara's rap. So,
and it was a lot of fun doing it too, because we've never done a rap. We don't even know what it is, but I think the group really caught on to the words, and we're just making fun of each other, and you know, we're saying it even in our normal conversation. We incorporated those words, and I don't know, it just now you ask them, one of the ladies was telling me that she didn't think she would like it, but when she started saying the words and we started rehearsing together, she said, oh, suddenly I feel all energized. And I think that feeling, like Cynthia say, you know, in the Chinese community, very little, not too many things excite them. But this, right? Because they all care is to eat and, you know, conversation with each other. But I feel that the Chinese community were energized by the rap. I felt the excitement. We walked down the streets, and people who have seen it got excited and asked us, where's your gai mo so, you know? And then we stopped them in the street, and they wanted to be whacked by our gai mo so. They actually lined up in a banquet.
yes, to be whacked. Can you imagine that?
Wanted to be whacked.
Community leaders wanting to get whacked. It's really a sight.
Yeah.
What would you say, Cynthia, was the main message that you wanted to portray through the rap?
I think, like Clara says, it's a symbol of empowerment, but also mainly for me, I think the younger generation has to respect the older people's wisdom. And I think that's the important message that I would like to see. And stop the violence, you know, stop whatever you're doing. Don't hurt us. Why are you hurting us? I don't even understand. So I think if we could get the message out that you don't need to hurt us at all. Whatever is happening, we must fix together. Everything is, you know, we must find unity in what is happening right now in the world.
Yeah, so what were some of the fears that you might have been feeling personally, but also that maybe you were hearing in your community at that time around the pandemic, and you know, seeing what was happening on you know, through the media as well, with these kind of hate-fueled acts of violence?
I'm an adventurous person, so I'd like to travel solo, and it's the same thing when I live in the city. I used to come home very late at night. I have to walk up a very steep hill to get to my house. I would do that 11, 12 o'clock at night, and I would have no fear. Now I get home before 6 o'clock. Before the sun goes down, I make sure that I'm home. And I feel that my freedom of being able to walk freely in the city has been stopped because of the fear of being attacked. And we carry our whistle, we carry our little alarm. And it's like, why am I doing this, But it's very real because we have a neighborhood watch in Chinatown, and we constantly get report that, a robbery happened just down the street from us. We will hear about it. This is broad daylight. So it's something that we have to pay attention to. I just read a report that there is 138% rise in car vandalism in the city. And so it's very concerning what is happening in San Francisco.
How has Chinatown changed since the start of the pandemic?
Oh, it's
Many, many changes.
even before the pandemic. I think maybe the rumor that there is, COVID, stop a lot of people from coming into Chinatown. And then, of course, then it's gotten worse. A lot of businesses have closed, but recently it has opened up quite a bit, and more people are coming in to visit. So that's good. Yeah, and the community is doing a lot of work to welcome the visitors.
What about yourself, Cynthia? I mean, how have you been coping since the pandemic has started?
For me, it's been quite difficult also because I have a walking tour company, and it is a ghost tour, Chinatown ghost tour. So many of my tours, of course, are nighttime. And so I used to walk to my car without any fear at, I finished about 9 o'clock at night. And even tour guides and I would go to the local restaurant to eat something, we call that midnight snack. And with no fear. Then by the time we get to our car to go home, it's about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. But now I cannot do that or will not do that. And my tours have taken a big drop because it is in the evenings, and it is finally building up again, but we have to start a lot earlier. And of course, my midnight snack activities have gone out the window. And so, once 8 o'clock comes around, right now it's daylight savings time, so that's very good. But once it becomes dark, I don't think I will be out there too much. And luckily, I have a good associate that is doing a lot of the tours right now, and so that has helped. But it's no fun. You're going to your car. You have to check twice to see if anyone's following you, and also to make sure that no one broke into it. That's another problem. The break-ins, and it's just scary. It's scary for me. I used to go out for a walk. I live right across the street from a park, and I haven't done that in a while. I would say a year, ever since the crimes have escalated. And although there are many tourists that live in my area, that come by where I live, however, it's still kind of scary, and to be watching your back all the time, that's no fun.
Both of you have lived very different lives, but managed to find your passion through the arts. How have you found embracing your identity as you have grown up?
Well, I don't think about it too much when I was young. I would say that there's one magical moment where I actually thought about my heritage. And that was after I started writing poetry, I was enrolled in a workshop. And at the end of the workshop, we were asked to get up and recite a poem. And I just started writing at that time, maybe less than a year. And I really wanted to participate, but I don't have anything memorized. So I was racking my brains of what can I do? And I remember one sentence here, another sentence there. And then it dawned on me, oh, maybe I can read this one Chinese poem that I learned when I was a child, that everybody in China would have learned that poem. I said, I remember that one. So I got up and I recited that poem in Chinese. And of course, everybody loved it because first they've never heard a Chinese poem before. And then, you know, just the sound of it is probably very exotic for everybody. But to me, I felt that I'm totally grounded. I knew exactly where I am from. I came from this huge treasure trove, this rich heritage. And that is my identity. That's who I am. I did not explore Chinese poetry until many years later, but now I am a translator. I have gone into and you know, studied the ancient language more now, and doing that by translating the language. So when you translate, you have to know what you're translating. You have to know every word and you have to know the context. So by doing that, I am in touch more and more with the Chinese language and the literary culture. So that makes me feel really good.
I really don't know how to answer that question very well, but I am truly Chinese American, and I didn't grow up, you know, in China or Hong Kong, and I basically only know Chinatown, and so my culture and heritage is about being Chinese American, which is very different. Being a dancer, I'd never even taken a Chinese dance class or folk dance class. And I went to Chinese school as a child. And so I could basically read a little bit of the menu when we go out to eat, but that's the extent of it. I cannot read the Chinese newspaper except make out certain words. And I practically have to ask Clara, what are they trying to say? How do I say something? And she is my teacher now. So I, you know, just being Chinese American, that's what I am. What they call ice cream and apple pie, right?
I really realized that there is a very distinct difference between Chinese and Chinese Americans. Mm-hmm. They are not the same. Our culture is totally different. And for me as an immigrant, when I come into Chinatown, Chinatown has a totally different culture. So I'm learning from Cynthia what that culture is, which is very different from, you know, how I was brought up.
Have you felt any pressures during the pandemic when it comes to how you view yourself and your identity?
Yeah, I feel very strongly that if you have a cause and you just follow that course, it doesn't matter what is happening, okay, whether there is a pandemic or not, whether there is discrimination or not, those are not the things that concern us. That's other people's problem. You know, we put one foot ahead of the other and we keep walking what we're trying to do. Okay, so if we stop here, then we move a little bit to the side and then we keep walking. And I think that's what gives us the energy to keep going. Now, it's not so easy to do it alone, but there's two of us So I feel very good because we have support for each other. And that is very important.
What actually inspires your work and your commitment to the arts and your community?
Well, for me, I think it is poetry. I think that I tend to find myself as a poet. Now, I studied music all my life. I started playing the piano when I was 4. My dad, being the piano manufacturer, you couldn't get away from studying the piano. And, you know, all he wanted me to be is to be a musician, to be a pianist. And I thought that was my life. But it's never a comfortable feeling. Even when I work really hard, like I said, you know, practicing 6 to 8 hours a day for 4 years, I, you know, graduated with good grades and all that, but it was never me. And when I found poetry, I knew that that's what I'm about. And so once I know that, then everything else, it's not that, you know, it's not that important. I just have to follow this course. Everything that I do, I think of it, has it, you know, is it for poetry? Is it for the arts? And then you have a purpose and you keep going.
I have to agree with that. I've never had a 9-to-5 job. And so all I know is, you know, performance and putting together events. You know, after traveling as a dancer ended, I had a business. I was in the jewelry business for over 20 years. And it was very much like showbiz because I'm always talking to people. And it was not like going to work 9 to 5. And it was so different. Right now, the Grand Avenue Follies, we have 8 retired school teachers, and some were professors, but I never had the opportunity or the desire to do anything like that. And so my desire was always to perform or put together events and do things like that. And so I'm still doing it, and I'm happy. And I think that's the direction that I will continue to follow.
So clearly expressing yourself through poetry, entertainment, or other artistic avenues have been really important in both of your lives. How important do you think the arts are for the community, and more specifically the AAPI community?
I can't say about the AAPI community, but I know that in Chinatown, the arts not look at something that is important, but we're there to create that awareness. That's our job.
I think definitely awareness of the arts is definitely has to be part of our lives from now on. And without it, it's meaningless. You know, life, everything works better. Music is medicine. Everything, magic is medicine. Dancing is medicine. All of this is medicine to help us get through anything, any type of crisis. And we have to make sure that it will be done.
To finish, I'd like to ask, what are your hopes for the arts community and also the Chinatown community?
Well, I hope the younger generation, because I like to work with children, and I really hope that I would be able to work with them, and that they would take an interest in the arts, and that the arts will become part of their life as they grow up. So that's what I would like to do. I love to teach. And so that is my hope for the community.
And Cynthia?
I also would like to say that, you know, that if we could contribute a little something to the children, to just get them motivated and for them to understand what we are about, instead of saying, oh, you old grandmas, you don't know what you're talking about. But for them to understand, and how we could contribute is maybe by not only having them interested in the arts and learning something, but and get them off the video games perhaps. And even if, you know, if we could contribute in some way, whether it's through maybe funding for them to take lessons, or, you know, like Clara offers, free lessons to the community, and for them to just get interested, to want to even learn. That's the whole thing, for them to want, and for them to be interested to learn. You know, you could offer them many things, but if they're not interested, there's nothing we could do.
Right.
But if we could get them interested and then teach them, then I think that is part of the hurdle.
Yeah. I completely agree. You know, just get them interested would be a fantastic step forward. And also that the plays that I have written for these children are intergenerational. So we've got grandmas acting with the children, and to bring the actors of different ages together. I think it is good for the children to see that, you know, it's not just about them, but it's about the community, that we can all enjoy this activity of drama together.
Thank you both so much for sharing your stories with me, and also, you know, telling me a bit more about your rap and what went on behind the scenes. I've absolutely loved hearing about your passions for the arts, your inspiration, coming together, and your experiences during the pandemic. So thank you so much, both of you, for your time. And MOCA thanks you as well for your donation and for contributing to this collection.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you for this time.